Now, Tony Maddox has sure got a shock. He faces jail. And thanks again to Aboriginal heritage laws that too often seem to be abused or used to defend what is, in my opinion, the imaginary. Tony is a real estate agent in Toodyay, northeast of Perth, and he decided to build a bridge over the tiny creek at the front of his property that kept washing away the path. And while he was at it, he added a bit of a pond. It's quite nice. Little did he know that he was angering the Rainbow Serpent that nobody has ever seen. Joining me is Tony Maddox. Tony Maddox, thanks for joining me. What happened when you put that road in? What was the first sign that you were in trouble?
Well, the first sign was a phone call from the Department of Planning, Lands, Heritage, acting on behalf of the Aboriginal Heritage Act of 1972. Two prosecutors rang me and said, "Tone, you've put a crossing across your creek. We'd like to come and talk to you about it." So I said, "That's absolutely not an issue at all. Come and talk to me." You know, I was totally, at that stage, totally unaware that the Aboriginal Heritage Act applied to my creek. Like, this crossing has been there for over 70 years now, and we've driven across it. I've driven across it personally the last 40 odd years with my neighbour, because it was my neighbour's farm and I've bought it off him. So we've been driving across this particular creek for years and years and years, and nobody ever mentioned anything about Aboriginal heritage until these two blokes rang me. And I simply said to them, "How did you find me? What happened?" They said the Shire had written to them because the Shire had a complaint that I completely blocked the creek. It was a permanent running creek and it blocked all the flow from downstream and la-di-da-di-da. So the Shire then asked me to put a development application in, which I did subsequently, because I'm an ex-councillor, so you do what you can, put a DA in for them, and part of that DA process, of course, alerted the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, and hence they came to talk to me. After all that, after that big, long, convoluted talk, they said, "You've broken the Aboriginal Heritage Act," which I didn't even know existed. So I said, "Well, how can I break something that I don't know exists?" They said, "You should have made appropriate inquiries." I said, "Well, appropriate inquiries to me was to the Shire, my title, my town planning scheme. All of those things indicated there was nothing to do with the creek." So I actually even rang Department of Water and Rivers, in those days they were, and consulted with them, and they said, "Look, Tone, as far as we're concerned, it's not a permanent running creek, so you can do what you like on the creek." So with all that knowledge, we proceeded.
In all this process, do you know if there's been any Aboriginal complainant that said, "Listen, the Rainbow Serpent won't be happy with this, what you've done to the water flow here"?
Andrew, that's the crazy part about this. Not one of our local elders has complained at all. In fact, quite the opposite. They've all been out here, and I've invited them all out, and they've all said what a wonderful job I've done and how the Woggle will be very, very happy with what I've done. And that's our local elders who live, born and bred in Toodyay. So no, there was never a complaint.
So it's white officials. It's white officials who say,
Yes.
"Listen, you know, the Rainbow Serpent's not going to be very..." By the way, this is the Rainbow Serpent's chance to make their views known. If there is a Rainbow Serpent around, they probably can leap out of the waters behind you and you know, either destroy you or thank you. But as far as you can tell, it's white people assuming the Rainbow Serpent, which doesn't exist, but even if they did, would be upset with what you did, and no one knows if he would be, would they?
No, they don't. And it's really interesting, mate. I've sat with a lot of our local elders, and one of them said to me the other day, and I can't quote what he said, but he did suggest that the people that were prosecuting me would have to be white. They certainly wouldn't have been Indigenous. We wouldn't have done that, Tone. I said, "You're right. You're dead right." So it's quite unbelievable, Andrew. In 70 odd years I've been on this earth, and I class myself as an Australian, My dad was Aussie. My dad's dad was Aussie. This is also my country. I live here and I respect my country, always have, always will do. If a farmer doesn't respect his land, then that's not respecting his income. And this is my income. This is my land. I've always respected it. And so I don't understand the heavy-handedness of the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. Why wouldn't they instead just say, Tone, you've broken our act. We're aware you didn't know anything about it. Let's educate you and tell you about it. And it's funny, mate, I've had more education from our local elders than I have from the department. And to their, thanks to them, I've learned an awful lot about their beliefs, about the serpent, about what he does, what he doesn't do. And as they've all said, Tone, you've done a wonderful job. I give up.
Tony Maddox, I can't believe it either. And you now face potentially jail. I mean, that's the ultimate sanction.
Yeah.
Where's your court case up to? Where's it going?
Well, we've been 4 times, because this has been going on for over a year now. It's the most amazing, inefficient system I've ever seen in my life. But over a year later, we're still here. We're going to court next week. We're going to trial next week on the 22nd of February at 9:30 in Perth Central District Law Courts on Hay Street, Perth. And they will then, I think it's set down for a 2-day trial. The outcome of that will determine whether I'm guilty or I'm not guilty, whether I'm fined or I'm not fined. But the other outcome of that, of course, is a huge amount of expenditure on my part already to get it to this stage with a lawyer and a barrister working for me now. All for what outcome? So all this, a year of my life has gone. I literally haven't worked for a year. I've been fighting this for a year. This is just destroys your heart. I tell you, my heart's in my land. Destroys your heart, destroys your head, destroys your soul. It's knocked the hell out of me as a human being. And what is the outcome? You know, the outcome is going to be an awful lot of money I've paid out for what? Even if I'm found guilty, there is nothing in the Act that tells them they have the power to ask me to remove the crossing. So the whole trial and the whole outcome of the trial is, I don't know. There's no words for it. I'm at a loss. I'm a pretty
I'm flabbergasted. I mean, that's not quite true, Tony. I'm afraid this country is so mad that I'm not astonished. I am, though, upset that it's come to this nonsense. I mean, name me one person who really is offended by what you've done. And I note that the Rainbow Serpent has not emerged during this interview to let their views be known. So please, you know, this, oh my goodness, all the best to you. Thank you so much for your time, Tony Maddox.
Andrew, thanks so much, mate.